Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where it's about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Leverage Redemption Episode 9. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. A very nice way to start off the back half of Season 1. Obviously, it's around Christmas time, which I'm surprised Parker, I guess it just shows how much growth she had. Also, side note, Beth, I always feel like I'm going to butcher her last name, Riesgriff? I'm probably butchered it. I directed this episode. I was like, oh, that's super dope. But the fact of the matter is, because we saw how crazy Parker got about Christmas in the past, but I guess she's kind of calmed down about it. She's all about it, but she's not as crazy. To be fair, a lot of Parker's wildness has been toned down. I think that just proof of just how much she's grown as an individual, as a person, and everything. So I think these past couple years have changed her in many different ways. The adventures of the original show changed her. Plus, on top of that, the time skip. But so I thought that was kind of interesting. Elliot's kind of got his date or whatever, at least that's what Brianna thinks, which I love that it's they keep getting their files or whatever keep getting their system in particular keeps getting someone trying to attempt to hack it. And I love that it's Hardison's off dealing with something else, which I love that you have Parker being oh, Hardison can't take time away to come send Christmas with me or something, and Elliot's just stop stirring up stuff, Brianna, getting stuff started. So because you have also Harry dealing with his daughter, which I figured that was probably going to be a little bit more of a thing this back half of the season, because they reference him having a daughter, but she didn't pop up in the first half. I also avoided watching the trailer for the second half of the season. I was I don't need to see it, and I don't want to see it. I'm going to go into this back half not knowing anything at all. So I kind of figured we'd probably get more of her. Obviously she's referenced, but I think we'll probably actually get to see her. She'll pop up in at least maybe one episode, maybe multiple episodes. We'll have to wait and see. But obviously, things are kind of complicated on that front. Interestingly enough, this all revolves around LeVar Burton in a library, which you're okay, him being obsessed with reading and everything. It's okay, wink, wink, nudge, judge, I got you. But also, it's this kid, well, I say kid, but he's an adult. Maurice owes a lot to the character of Mr. Blanche, because it's I was a kid, I was gay, and I was being bullied, but the library and Mr. Blanche became his sanctuary. It's you've got all these books set aside for you can read, stuff that he couldn't go home to read. Because I think it was kind of his dad was kind of religious, or just whatever the circumstances were. It's that was his sanctuary, so he actually comes to them for help. And it's okay, because it turns out Mr. Blanche has cancer, and it's well, if he got cancer because of asbestos or something like that, it's no, I don't want you to get revenge or con anyone. To a certain extent, I want you to make Mr. Blanche feel like a hero for one day, just, and obviously Sophie's kind of against it, just because it's this is kind of out of their wheelhouse. And that is the thing, over the course of the original series, they took a lot of weird jobs that didn't fall into the lane of revenge. They were just kind of other jobs. And I think that's such a fascinating thing. And I think it speaks volumes that Sophie's nah, let's, that's what our team is all about, getting revenge. I'm that's such a very Nate way to look at things. Because she even said, when she's talking to Brianna later on, it's oh, Nate would enjoy it. She's oh, because Nate would be all about it. And she's no, Nate would actually hate it. And for her, it's that make me want to take the job, eat that much more, So that's what it kind of gets her thinking about. Because Harry was referencing, how the holidays are complicated for him, but he's he knows how much of a hard hit it is for her as well. But initially, like I said, Sophie didn't want to do it because this isn't in their wheelhouse, but I love the post-it notes, because it's all right, they're each going to have clues about it's right, let's all play this game of try to guess the famous person on our heads. And it's just each one of them had it's come on, just, and the ones Elliot and Parker had were switched, because they had to switch those back. Just do it. And so it's fine, they kind of broke her down about it. And even Elliot would kind of the reluctancy in it was right, let's do this. So they want to, trying to figure out what kind of adventure they should go on. I love the little winks and nods in this episode, because I didn't catch the title. I just happened to notice it when I was rewinding. I was wait, is that what so I didn't rewind all the way to see the book title, but there's I'm assuming Detective Bonanno wrote a memoir, and I was like, that's a nice little wink and nod. Like, really quickly, if you're unfamiliar or don't remember, because maybe you didn't. Obviously, once again, I rewatched the entirety of the original series before watching Leverage Redemption, so it's a little fresher in my mind. But if you're unaware, Bonanno is the detective that they worked with from time to time, crossed paths with, helped out. He helped them out, kind of taking down bad guys. But from season 2 to about season 4, because that was all like Boston stuff. I don't think he. Once again, now I'm blanking a lot. I'm pretty sure he didn't pop up at all in season 5. Maybe he did. I don't remember. Do correct me in the comments down below, because I know season 5 takes place in Portland, so like I know he wasn't around then, but I can't remember if he made like one final appearance or not. I just don't remember. But regardless, like that's, it's just kind of like, oh, I'm assuming he made like a memoir book or something like that. I was like, oh, that's like a nice little touch there. That's what Mr. Blanche is reading. And I also love how like Brianna's like trying to figure out like who Elliot's like Santa baby is and stuff like that, and nerds out in the moment she sees like that old school computer. So they're looking through all the books he's checked out, which apparently it's like 10,000. So it's like he's basically been like, for the past 30 years he's checked out and read like one book a day, and it's like, which is nuts. But then Elliot kind of gets to see like the type of man that further proof of what Maurice was bringing up, because his guy like started crap with a guy. It's like, oh, like this guy, he's like, I pay taxes, I can't have like a homeless person. I'm not. It's like, why does that have to deal with? He's like, oh, because I pay for my taxes and the taxes go into this library. I'm not going to have like some homeless person just staying here. But it's like, Blanche was getting on him about it, but then like Elliot stepped in, and because Elliot, it's like, obviously like we know like he makes sure like people like who've served, it's like, yeah, they deserve our respect. Obviously there was that con in the original series when they were helping veterans who were like homeless and were part of like that college student psychopathic like things that he was doing, and that whole thing, like it was like a test that they were running on like tactics that the government could use to break people, so that whole that was a test of just like how Elliot feels about that time and time again, and just further proof of that. But him and Blanche hit it off, and it turns out what he's really interested in is a spy novel. So they're creating a whole scenario. Obviously you have all the special effects, Elliot getting the car, it's like, oh yeah, I get it. I was like, oh, it's red, it's nice. It's like, oh, no, but it's Christmassy. Parker's trying to get the helicopter. Brianna's doing all like the special effects and stuff like that, because trying to spy adventure it up. Harry's like asking about his lines and stuff like that, but where do I come from, like what's my motivations and stuff like that. So they're planning to turn this into a giant spy thing. And I love, it is interesting immediately like how like Elliot's playing his role and stuff like that. I love Brianna being like, oh yeah, that low like wobbly like raspy voice, I thought that was like too old school and wasn't going to work, but this Gramps is all about it, because he was kind of reluctant, but he was like, all right, let's do it. Like he was so gung-ho about it, and then it's like, oh, let's take this car. He's like, no, and he breaks into another car. I was like, oh, this is about to go super sideways, because he starts hot wiring the car. I'm like, that's crazy. It was like, oh, I guess he's read enough novels and stuff like that he's super into this, that he's taking this seriously. So, and even Elliot's kind of liking him about like the way he's handling things. It's like, granted, he threw out Elliot's real phone because it's like, oh, we can't let anyone trace us, let's go to a certain address and stuff like that. Well, first they had to visit a hacker, and Parker's playing the role of the hacker. There's actually nothing on the thumb drive, because he was suggesting like, no, we should actually check it out and stuff like that. And it's like his recipe to one of his things. And I love also like little touches that what's right beside Parker during this is one of those like orange sodas. I don't remember if it's the exact brand that Hardison drinks, but it's like, yeah, because it's like, of course, like she's like, her image of what a hacker is, it's like, yeah, she's basing it on Hardison. Like Hardison's the hacker like she's come to know the most over these years. So I thought that was pretty dope. And so it's kind of like, right, we gotta fake it, and it's like, oh yeah, here's this address. And I love that like Harry came in looking like Kurt Russell from God. I'm about to make this reference, but it's like, was it Escape from L.A.? I don't know. I know of the movie, but I can't remember if that's what it is. Is it Escape from L.A. that he does that? Like, is that what it's like? He's got the typical Kurt Russell hair, and he's got like the eye patch thing going on. Very Solid Snake-esque in certain regard. Well, older Solid Snake in certain regard, but so I found that so fascinating. in the long run. But then, like, it's like, oh, we got these fake, people coming to, like, rough us up. But it turns out real people step up, because we did see that someone is actually following Elliot, and it turns into a brawl. And your boy, Mr. Blanche, has got some moves. I was like, whoa, this guy, like, wait, what's up with this guy? And it turns out, like, RIZ is the ones that have been following Elliot. Of course, they've always had an interest in him, but it's also like all that Leverage Incorporated has been doing has been screwing with their operations. Because even later on, Bly's like, oh yeah, initially I thought you guys were fun, and it's like now you've become annoying, so... Because I'm assuming it's just kind of like all that they've been doing has kind of eventually kind of backlogged and kind of affected their business. So it's like, nah, the kid gloves are off, so we were coming after you whatever way we could. But then just when we're getting a picture of Elliot, we just happened to get a picture of Blanche, whose real name is Copperhead. And I love the twist of he's actually a spy. I was like, that's actually really dope, and explains everything with like his skills. The fact is, immediately after Elliot got taken, he hopped on a bike. It's like, okay, so this is interesting. They were setting up a spy story for an actual real retired spy. So I thought that was fantastic. But I love the whole thing with, like, the RIZ, like, trying to interrogate Elliot. And I love that it's just like, man, you up here hiring these rent-a-cops. And then, like, Elliot changing his voice, but like, she didn't hire me. And doing that, like, I'm like, he's such a dick towards these guys. Cause I even love at one point, Blind's like, could you really please just stop basically bullying my hired guns and, like, making them feel inadequate? But because it's also like, he's like, oh no, truth serum, even though I've been giving everyone out there, because it's standard OP, operating procedure, but this is a new one called Red Haze, which kind of gets you a little high, but it also triggers you to, like, all you need is certain triggers to, like, make a memory come to the forefront. So all she says is, like, Operation Kansas, and Elliot gets trapped in it. So... Now, I was almost wondering whether, like, at one point was she going to mention Monroe or something like that. Now, the reason why I'm saying that is because Elliot made a point to say this back in season 3 of the original series, was the worst thing he's ever done in his entire life was while he was working for Damian Monroe. That's what I was wondering if that's what she was going to reference. I think this is something else entirely, but I guess it's, like, one of the really, really bad things. Like, it's one of those terrible things. Because I guess, like... The Monroe thing is, like, it's a terrible thing he did, and maybe, like, the Operation Kansas, a lot of people were involved. So, like, what he did for Monroe, it's a sin that falls on him. It's a terrible thing I did, but, like, this Operation Kansas, it seems like probably other people's lives were lost, like, innocent people in his unit and stuff like that, military-wise. So it's, like, it probably, like, takes a cake and on that side of things, on a larger scale than just himself, of just kind of like, he feels like he let people down. So, it's one of those things he just can't forgive himself for. Elliot always feels the need to be the one making up for everything. Like, it's never enough. It's like, yeah, I did one thing, but, I've got a lifetime of mistakes I've got to, like, make up for. A lot of stuff in his life that he's done that he's got to try and make right. And even if he can't make those exact things right, he can at least do good in the world to at least balance his skills to some extent, even if they never will ever be fully balanced, So, but obviously, you have Blanche showing up, trying to figure out who it is, because it turns out he stole a ledger decades ago, back at like 30 years ago, that has basically dirt on everyone. Because it turns out, like, because that's why Bly wants it, is because this ledger, like, there's a lot of people, like, it's like, yeah, a lot of warlords have turned, like, big time businessmen type of situation. So, like, this is a lot of dirt on a lot of terrible people. And so ultimately, he ended up disappearing with it. Because he never actually took a look at it. And he says, honestly, it got destroyed, and no one will believe him if he told them that, so that's why he had to disappear. And, like, he hid in plain sight by becoming an ordinary librarian. I also really quickly I forgot the other little thing tied to Mr. Blanche, like, Parker pretended to be a hacker, be like, oh, if we ever get the chance, we could, you could stick around a little longer, we can watch some TNG. And as they're walking away, he's like, what is TNG? I'm like, all right, your little inside joke. If you're unaware, TNG being Star Trek The Next Generation, for one, once again, it's just playing into the Hardison character because Hardison would make references like that. But also, it's an inside joke because LeVar Burton was on TNG. I'm not a Star Trek person, but I like, I actually, the first thing I ever knew LeVar Burton for, it's a weird, I don't even know if it's a weird thing. It's like, I know him because of like Rooster Teeth, because his daughter Mika worked at Rooster Teeth for a while. So, like, there was that correlation too. Like, she would show up in some videos first, and then she eventually worked at Rooster Teeth. And, like, LeVar Burton did stuff like for, was it that Reading Rainbow thing? I think he did it for a, God. What is it? Extra Life. A couple years ago, he did something like Extra Life related. That's actually my first, because like acting wise, the thing I first got familiar with LeVar Burton with is actually not, once again, I ended up finding out about the Star Trek stuff like after the fact. But the thing I made a new from was like the show Perception. It was a TNT show, interestingly enough, with Eric McCormack and Rachel Lee Cook. This is from like a couple years ago. But like, it's like, that was actually kind of like, I want to say one of the first things I ever saw LeVar Burton for. But yeah, like, yeah, I went on a whole tangent, but it's like, yeah, like, it's just like, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I didn't know him from the Star Trek stuff, but I was like, yeah, like, I do know now of it, even though I'm not the like Star Trek person, but yeah, it's just the inside jokes. I really appreciate little like winks and nods like that. It's just kind of, it's nice because it's one of those things like, oh, if you know, you know. If you don't, it doesn't matter. It's just supposed to be like a little inside joke for the people who would know. I don't know. I like those type of things. But circling back to it, they actually were able to track down RIZ because it's hard to like pinpoint them down. The person who ended up giving them the lead, interestingly enough, ended up being Harry, because Harry actually has a tie to RIZ because his old firm, used to use them. But so for Sophie, it's like, it pisses her off because it's like, this is yet another thing you're lying about. It's like, how many secrets are you going to keep hiding from us? And he tries to justify it later on of like, yeah, they used them for like certain like information gathering and stuff like that, but he never asked the details. But for her, it's just kind of still like, no, like, you want to be a part of this team and everything, you got to stop lying. And now, like, when he ends up talking to his former, like, partner / boss, I think, because he's saying, like, right, what I'm doing right now, like, the good I'm doing when he gets invited to that party, it's like, oh, this isn't, this is... What I'm doing right now isn't just me play acting. I have no intention of coming back to my job. But his boss is like, no, your desk is always there. Like, I'll see you soon. Like, he's pretty sure Harry's going to come back because he's like, yeah, like, because this guy is like, because Harry is like, yeah, you taught me like the right way of doing things. And he's like, yeah, and you taught me the other way. So it's like Harry was kind of the negative influence because this guy was actually kind of good. And it's kind of sad that Harry's up here trying to make right, trying to go down the right path, and it's like he's the one that set not only his boss but other people on the wrong path as well. But even Harry being like, it's not too late to be a hero, like all you have to do is just like step back, step aside, because he starts referencing like stuff. They say, oh, like these people you're with, you're calling them your friends and your allies, like, oh, you're playing the Robin Hood role, but it's like, do you know about this, and this? Because doing all that he did cost him his marriage, it cost him his daughter. But it's like, Harry's got a long list of sins he's got to try and make up for. And I get it. Like, I mean, maybe Elliot's been a little bit more open with the core group about a lot of the stuff that he's done in the past that he's not proud of. But it's like, I guess it's like, well, because Elliot's done it one time. The Monroe thing is the only time Elliot's really like made it so that it's like, right, we spent this entire time going after Monroe and you never said anything about you having any connection to him. So this is one of those things of like, but it's not just one thing. It's another thing and another thing with Harry. He's got a lot of secrets, a lot of stuff he's not proud of, because it's also like, oh, are you afraid that if they found out about you, they wouldn't let you like kick it with them anymore? I can't remember if he said that or whether like Sophie's the one that kind of made that reference of like, oh, you don't think we take you. So I think his boss's like final words before leaving even like, it made him go like, right, like, I am trying to go down this path of redemption, but will there be a point where like I will, like, you know, it's like I'm turning over a new leaf, but it's like it doesn't take away, it doesn't make up completely for all that I've done. So will he eventually kind of like backpedal? It becomes a question like if things get too bad and he's crossed the line that the team decides to boot him off, like that might be potentially where we see later points of season 1 go, that it's like he did some stuff like it just too many lies and too many secrets, done too much bad stuff that they can't work. Yeah, they're all criminals, but he's on a different level because they've never been the criminals that he has. Sophie had to deal with that at one point in time, that come with terms of just kind of like, right, she never really thought about where like a lot of the paintings and stuff like that, like she was like stealing in the money. Like she never thought about who was buying it and like whose money she was getting, like the terrible things that were associated with. Nate tried to make her feel better by being like, no, like you're not connected to it. I want to say that was stuff that came up in the final season. Like she'd never really thought about it before. And so it kind of put things in a different perspective for her about like kind of some of her criminal work, you know? So I thought that, I think that might be kind of a similar thing with the Harry situation. We'll see. And you had Sophie doing a very Nate-like conversation between her and Bly, where it's just kind of like, especially the way she's like, yeah, like, you want this drive, the ledger, then you'll let him go. This will be the time. And she just kind of like walks away. And it's just like a very like Nathan Ford move to make, you know? So, but sadly, they're not willing to just sit around and wait. They're coming for the drive and everything in Copperhead. So, time to go on the offensive, use all the stuff they've set up, all the like fake stuff for the you know, the convincer, as Sophie puts it, like everything set up to make it seem real, like obviously for like the fake spy stuff they were setting up. So, but the moment he got shot, Copperhead, like, you know, Mr. Blanche got shot. I was like, okay, it's part of the con. And it's like, yep, gave them floppy disk. It was a fake. And the guy got released from RIZ and just like, don't worry, we're not going to kill you. You know, it's just business. But she's like, yeah, do remember, though, you signed an NDA. So all this stuff, including that incident in Reno, will get released. So keep that in mind. It's like, oh, so you're cutthroat, but not as cutthroat as you could be. So that's some good. I'm not saying that this RIZ has a conscience or something like that, but it's like, yeah. Because like I said, I talked about this in part 1 of season 1. Like, they popped in, like, they made, 2 appearances in season 1? I mean, the first half of season 1, so I think we're going to see a lot more of them in the back half. But RIZ, in particular, Bly is going to be, like, because I talked about it at the time, like, she's kind of being, like, she's set up to be, like, the antagonist of this season. Kind of like a, you know, a Damian Monroe status, or the guy they get mixed up with in season 4 of the original show. I mean, obviously every season like has its like, well, season 1 and 2 kind of like came, like the main antagonist kind of got revealed in like near the end, whereas like 3, 4, and technically 5, like maybe like 3 and 4 were like build up to like the conclusions at the end, whereas like seasons 1 and 2 and 5 are just kind of like, it kind of hits you at the very end to an extent. It's a whole thing, if you get what I'm trying to say. At the end of the day, though, everyone thinks that Blanche is dead, so he does get to start over. I am curious what that means about the whole Maurice thing. Like, how does that like play out? I guess he's just got to leave behind this life as Mr. Blanche and maybe get to start over somewhere else. I wonder, do they even tell Maurice? Because later on, we find out that's Hardison's gift, because he's actually the one that because like he was like, oh, Elliot Spencer. And even I was like, how the hell does he know Elliot's name? Like, we never really got into that. I mean, granted, everyone finds everyone like different ways, but it's like for him to call out Elliot, I guess like, for him to know specifically, oh, you're Elliot, and just not like to know that like right off the bat in the moment he meets them. It's like, oh yeah, they're a team, I need your help. But it's like, yeah, Hardison sent him their way, so kind of his Christmas gift, specifically to Parker. But I think maybe kind of a Christmas gift to the entire team. But Harry's the one that ended up figuring out that the drive was still, the floppy disk was actually still active, that he had never destroyed it. He didn't look at it, but he never destroyed it, because Harry was like, you check this book out like over like 1,000 times, and if you're checking it out once a year, that way it still keeps up in circulation in a library. So it's a very old book that he knew like no one would like touch and stuff like that. So it's interesting. And once again, just like the nature of everything, like obviously this episode being about a librarian and stuff like that. Obviously Noah Wyle, the original librarian with the movies, but also like being one in a TV show, but also Christian Kane being one in a TV show as well. So it's like, I just thought that was all kind of a neat little, like, you know, and obviously this being like a connected to Dean Devlin, who also did those as well. So it's like, it's just interesting like how it all works out like that. It's like, that's not an accident. It's 100% done on purpose. Especially because like Harry's the one that kind of figures out the book thing. I'm like, that's even more fitting in that regard. Even the fact is that Elliot and Blanche ended up bonding over like the books, even like their past and stuff like that. Because the reason why he doesn't want treatment is because he doesn't want to go out like that. But Elliot reminded him of like, right, like the fact of the matter is you saved so many people's lives. Like this library, like you helped so many people, like you changed their lives for the better. You were there for them when they kind of might not have had anyone else. So that made these past 30 years worthwhile at the end of the day. Because you almost said like, right, I never looked at the floppy disk, so it was almost like not worth this. Like, no, it was. But he also talks to Elliot about our conversation. Don't wait, because Elliot talks about the fact is that him and his dad aren't on good terms. He hasn't seen his dad since he was 18. There was an episode in the original series. At the end of the episode, he tried to go visit his dad and knocked on the door, but never got a response. And so throughout the rest of the series, that never came up again. But it's still like, yeah, like even after all this time, years later, it's still an underlining issue of like Elliot and his dad still aren't on the same page about everything. So it turns out the person he's contacting at the end, I don't know. I don't remember that ever came up about him having siblings or something, but it's like, oh, how's dad? So either it's someone looking after his dad, or that was a sibling, because it seemed like it was a sibling or something. It's someone named Jay, and it's like, oh, they were no-shows. I don't know if it's like a sister or a brother thing. Like, I feel like I might have remembered them referencing Elliot having siblings, but maybe I could, a sibling or multiple siblings. I just don't remember. Do correct me in the comments down below. This is going to be going up with the rest of the episode, so I'll probably maybe get some answers to that, either from Googling or just finishing the rest of the season, because maybe that'll come up. But it's a fresh start for Blanchard at the end. Not Blanchard, Blanche. I had a teacher named Miss Blanchard, Penny Blanchard specifically. Shout out to Miss Penny Blanchard. Hope you're still doing okay. That was like 5th grade, and it's been like a couple of decades. Regardless, tangents and all that aside. I just hope, you know, I'm not going to go down that route of thinking I'm like, that could be depressing. But aside from all that, you had Sophie handing out presents, sending Harry on his way to visit his daughter in Aspen. I got a Nintendo 64 for Brianna. We never actually got to find out what was in Parker's, because she got distracted talking to Hardison. And there was one, I think, still left for Elliot, but he was off dealing with all that. Sadly, it's like, yeah, his dad was a no-show, so, like, he drank a little bit of the alcohol and he just kind of threw it away. It's like, yeah, like, you know, Blanche was saying, like, don't, like, wait, you know? It's like, try to make something happen now. Because for him, the reason why he never did reach out to his dad, because it'd been so many years and he just felt like it was too late to try and reach out. But, you know, it's never too late. But now it's like, yeah, his dad's not been receptive on his end, and it's just makes Elliot not want to try, because it's like, right, my dad's not willing to try, then I'm not going to either, because it is too late. But, you know, maybe that will change over the course of the season. Hopefully it doesn't take, like, you know, because, you know, hopefully it's not like a parallel to, like, Nathan's situation with his dad. Like, his dad came back into his life after all those years, and the circumstances played out the way they did. He sent his dad on his way, but his dad came back and, you know, sacrificed himself to save his son and everything. So, you know, like, they never had time to really, like, fully repair their relationships of all the complications that were there. So hopefully Elliot doesn't find himself in similar circumstances, but we'll see. I did find it interesting and a little suspicious, Brianna being like, oh yeah, the floppy drives, yeah, it's just 30 years. I'm like, did you find something up there that you're not telling the rest of the team? Like, I'm wondering, is it something related to, is it something she's going to be working on by herself because she wants to, like, no, I'm going to do this on my own? Because she kind of has set up the fact is she wants to learn all she can from the team so she can kind of do her own thing. So I'm curious, is she like, oh, like those people in that, I'm going to go after them myself. I'm not going to I want to take them down myself. It's going to be my project without involving the rest of the team. Because she just seemed a little cagey about it. She's like, yeah, like, if it was like, yeah, sad, like, her response kind of seems like that. Not unless there's, like, some big dirt on, like, other people, like I was wondering, like, maybe there was something tied to Harry in some shape or form that she didn't want to bring up, but, like, it seemed like it might be something she's trying to handle on her own. That's my thought about it, but we'll see where this kind of goes. But I'm excited to have more episodes of Leverage. Like I was saying, these, like I did with everything that I end up binging, or like, when all the episodes are released all at once, I will be releasing these reviews at all at once. I'm once again not going to pick a date because I'll release them all when I finish the entire season. So, well, second half of the season. So, but like I said, I'm excited to see where the rest of the back half of this season ends up taking us, where the next episode in particular takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, little light to the force, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.